Jake Morrison felt his stomach drop as the ship shook violently around him. Red lights flashed everywhere on the bridge of the USS Defiant. The alarm sounds were so loud he could barely hear his crew shouting over the noise. "Hull breach on deck." "7," yelled Lieutenant Amy Collins from her station. "We're losing power to the main engines." Jake gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked the ship. Through the main screen, he could see the green energy blasts from the Zephyrian ships cutting through space toward them. The reptilian aliens had been hunting human ships for months, and today they had finally caught the Defiant. "Sir, we need to evacuate," called out his weapons officer, Danny Rodriguez. "The core is going critical." Jake knew Danny was right. They had fought the Zephyrians across 12 different star systems, but today their luck had run out. The enemy. Ships were too fast and too many. His crew had families back on Earth. He would not let them die here. "All hands to the escape pods," Jake ordered. "Abandon ship." The crew moved quickly through the corridors as the ship continued to shake apart. Jake was the last to leave the bridge, making sure everyone else got out safely. He climbed into his escape pod just as the Defiant's hull began to crack open like an egg. The pod shot away from the dying ship toward the planet below. Jake watched through the small window as his home for 3 years exploded in a ball of fire. 28 good people had served on that ship. He hoped they all made it to the surface alive. The planet was called Kepler 442b. It was supposed to be empty except for some old mining equipment. Jake had studied the files during their long journey here. The surface was mostly jungle with some mountains in the north. There were no known intelligent life forms. His pod hit the thick treetops hard. Jake felt his head bang against the sidewall. Everything went black for a moment. When he woke up, he could smell smoke and hear the sound of his pod's emergency. Beacon beeping. Jake pushed open the pod door and stepped out into the hot, wet air. The jungle was thick with green plants and strange sounds. Big insects buzzed around his head. In the distance, he could hear the sound of energy weapons firing. His left shoulder hurt badly. Jake looked down and saw blood on his uniform. A piece of metal from the pod had cut him during the crash. He tore off a piece of his shirt and tied it around the wound to stop the bleeding. The weapon sounds were getting closer. Jake pulled out his sidearm and began walking toward the noise. Maybe some of his crew had landed nearby and were fighting Zephyrian troops. He had to find them. As he pushed through the thick plants, Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. It was not human voices or Zephyrian hisses. It was something else entirely. Something that sounded like giant insects clicking and buzzing. Jake knew that sound. Every human soldier knew that sound. It was the battle cry of the Krillians. The Krillians were humanity's other great enemy. They looked like giant bugs with hard shells and sharp claws. They were 8 feet tall and strong enough to tear a human in half. For 10 years, humans and Krillians had fought each other across the galaxy. The war had killed millions on both sides. Jake crept forward until he could see through the trees. What he saw made no sense at all. 3 Krillians were fighting a group of Zephyrian soldiers. The bug-like aliens were using their natural claws and some kind of energy weapons Jake had never seen before. The Zephyrians were firing back with their green plasma rifles. One of the Krillians was bigger than the others. His shell was dark brown with red markings. He moved like a trained fighter, using the trees for cover and attacking from different angles. The other 2 Krillians followed his lead. Jake watched as the big Krillian jumped from behind a tree and landed on top of a Zephyrian soldier. His claws went right through the reptilian's armor. The Zephyrian screamed and fell to the ground. The remaining Zephyrians tried to run, but the other 2 Krillians were too fast. Within minutes, all the enemy soldiers were dead. Jake had never seen Krillians fight so well together. Usually they just charged forward and tried to overwhelm their enemies. The big Krillian made a series of clicking sounds to his companions. They began checking the dead Zephyrians for weapons and supplies. Jake knew he should run. If they found him, they would kill him without question. But then something happened that changed everything. More Zephyrians appeared from the other side of the clearing. These ones had heavy weapons and energy shields. They surrounded the three Krillians before Jake could even think about warning them. The Krillians raised their weapons, but Jake could see they were outnumbered. The Zephyrians had them trapped. In a few seconds, all three aliens would be dead. Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. He stepped out from behind the trees and opened fire on the Zephyrian soldiers. His first shots hit two of the reptilians in the back. They fell forward, their shields sparking and going dark. The other Zephyrians turned to face this new threat, giving the Krillians a chance to fight back. The battle was over quickly. Jake and the three Krillians working together were too much for the remaining Zephyrians. Within minutes, all the enemy soldiers were dead. Jake stood in the clearing, breathing hard. His shoulder was bleeding again, and his hands were shaking. He had just fought alongside his worst enemies to defeat his other worst enemies. Nothing in his military training had prepared him for this. The big Krillian walked slowly toward him. Jake raised his weapon, but the alien held up one of his claws in what looked like a peaceful gesture. The Krillian reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a small device. "Human," the device said in a mechanical voice. "You fight well. Why do you help us?" Jake stared at the translation device. He had heard about them, but never seen one used. "The Zephyrians are our enemy." "Two?" he said carefully. "Sometimes the enemy of my enemy is my friend." The Krillian made a sound that might have been laughter. "I am Thaxmer of the Third Hive Cluster. These are my Nest brothers, Zeekthai and Morden. We hunt the same prey as you, human. Perhaps we should hunt together?" Jake looked at the three aliens. A week ago, he would have shot them on sight. Now he was talking about working with them. But the Zephyrians were the real threat here. They had destroyed his ship and killed his friends. Maybe Thaxmer was right. Maybe they should work together. "I'm Jake Morrison, commander of the USS Defiant," he said. "Or I was until they blew up my ship. I'm looking for my crew members. They should be somewhere on this planet." Thaxmer's head tilted to one side. "The metal eggs that fell from the sky? We have seen them. Some landed near the old mining tunnels to the north. The Zephyrians hunt there too." Jake felt his heart jump. Some of his crew were still alive. "Can you help me reach them?" "The Zephyrians have many warriors in that area," Thaxmer said. "Too many for 3 Krillians or 1 human, but together we might succeed." Jake looked at the dead Zephyrians around them. Already, he could see that this strange alliance might work. The Krillians were strong and fast, but they fought in simple, direct ways. He had tactical knowledge and weapons training that could help them be more effective. "All right," Jake said. "Let's work together. But I want to know why you're fighting the Zephyrians too." Thaxmer made another sound that might have been laughter. "They came to our worlds, human. They took our young for their experiments. Now we hunt them across the stars, just as you do." Jake realized that maybe humans and Krillians were not so different after all. Both species were fighting for their survival against the same enemy. Both had lost friends and family to Zephyrian attacks. As they began walking north toward the mining tunnels, Jake wondered what his commanding officers would think about this alliance. Probably they would court-martial him for working with the enemy. But right now, staying alive was more important than following regulations. The jungle around them was getting darker as the sun set. Jake could hear strange animal sounds in the distance. This planet was dangerous even without the war going on above their heads. "How long have you been fighting the Zephyrians?" Jake asked as they walked. 6 of your months," Thaxmer replied, through his translator. "They destroyed 2 of our colony worlds before we could stop them. Now they hunt us as they hunt you." Jake did some quick math in his head. That meant the Zephyrians had been fighting both humans and Krillians at the same time. No wonder they seemed to have unlimited ships and soldiers. They were probably fighting other species too? "Do you think we can win?" Jake asked. Thaxmer stopped walking and looked at him with his large, compound eyes. "Alone, neither of our species can defeat them. But together, we might survive long enough to find a way." Jake nodded. It was not much hope, but it was better than nothing. Tomorrow they would try to rescue his crew and fight their way to safety. Tonight he would sleep next. to 3 alien warriors who had once been his enemies. War, Jake thought, made strange allies of everyone. Jake woke up to the sound of Krillian voices clicking and buzzing quietly in the darkness. He had slept better than he expected, considering he was surrounded by 3 alien warriors who had been his enemies just hours before. The jungle around them was still dark, but he could see the first hints of dawn through the thick tree cover. Thaxmer was standing guard while his 2 companions, Zeekthai and Morden, prepared some kind of food over a small energy heater. Jake sat up slowly, feeling the pain in his wounded shoulder. The bleeding had stopped, but the cut was still sore. "Human Jake," Thaxmer said through his translator device. "You sleep loudly. The Zephyrians will hear you from far away." Jake rubbed his eyes and stood up. "Sorry, I guess I snore. My wife always complained about that." He stopped talking suddenly. He had not thought about his wife Karin in weeks. She was safe on Earth, probably watching the news feeds about the war. She did not even know his ship had been destroyed. Zeekthai approached Jake with a small bowl of what looked like green soup. The young Krillian was smaller than the others, with lighter-colored shell markings. He held out the bowl and made a soft clicking sound. "He offers you food," Thaxmer explained. "It is travel rations from our ship, safe for humans to eat." Jake took the bowl and sniffed it. The smell was not bad, kind of like vegetable soup with some spices he did not recognize. He took a small sip and was surprised to find it actually tasted good. "Thank you," Jake said to Zeekthai. The young Krillian made a happy buzzing sound and returned to his companions. "We must move soon," Thaxmer said. "The mining tunnels are still far away. The Zephyrians will have patrols searching for survivors from your ship." Jake nodded and finished the soup quickly. As they gathered their equipment, he watched how the 3 Krillians worked together. They moved with practiced efficiency, each one knowing what the others needed without speaking. It reminded him of his own crew working together on the Defiant. They began walking through the jungle as the sun came up. Jake noticed that the Krillians moved very quietly despite their size. Their clawed feet seemed to know exactly where to step to avoid making noise. Thaxmer led the way, while Zeekthai and Morden kept watch on the sides. "How long have you 3 been fighting together?" Jake asked as they walked. "Since we were young," Thaxmer replied. "We hatched in the same nest cycle. In our culture, nest brothers stay together for life." Jake found this interesting. He had always thought Krillians were just violent insects who fought without thinking. But these 3 clearly had a strong bond and worked as a team. "What about families?" Jake asked. "Do you have wives and children?" Thaxmer made a sound that might have been sadness. "Zeekthai has a clutch of eggs back on our home world. Morden's mate was killed when the Zephyrians attacked our colony. I have no family except my nest brothers." Jake felt a stab of sympathy. These aliens had lost people they cared about, just like humans had. The war was causing pain for everyone involved. They stopped to rest near a stream around midday. Jake used the clear water to clean his wound and replace his makeshift bandage. Zeekthai watched him work and then approached with a small tube of something that looked like silver gel. "Healing compound," Thaxmer explained. "It will help your injury." Jake hesitated for a moment, then decided to trust them. He let Zeekthai apply the gel to his shoulder. The pain disappeared almost immediately, and he could feel the skin starting to heal. "This is amazing," Jake said. "Our medical technology. Is not this advanced?" "Different species develop different strengths," Thaxmer said. "We have always been good at healing. You humans seem to be good at many things." They continued walking after the rest stopped. Jake began to notice that the Krillians were teaching him things as they traveled. Morden showed him how to move quietly through the thick plants. Zeekthai pointed out which sounds meant danger and which ones were just normal jungle noises. In return, Jake shared what he knew about military tactics and Zephyrian fighting methods. He showed them how to use cover more effectively and how to coordinate their attacks better. The aliens were quick learners and seemed genuinely interested in his knowledge. "Your species fights in interesting ways," Thaxmer said during another rest stop. "You think before you act?" "Most species just use their natural abilities. We have to," Jake replied. Humans are not naturally strong or fast compared to other species. We survive by thinking and working together. Working together? Thaxmer repeated. Yes, we are learning this from you. Late in the afternoon, they heard the sound of weapons fire in the distance. Jake felt his heart speed up. It might be his crew fighting Zephyrian soldiers. They began moving faster through the jungle, being careful to stay hidden. The sounds got louder as they approached. Jake could hear human voices shouting orders and the distinctive whine of Zephyrian energy weapons. They crept up to the edge of a clearing and looked down at the battle below. 3 human soldiers were trapped behind some fallen trees. Jake recognized them immediately. There was Lieutenant Amy Collins, his communications officer. Next to her was Sergeant Pete Walsh and Private Lisa Turner. They were surrounded by at least 8 Zephyrian soldiers. My crew, Jake whispered to Thaxmer, we have to help them. 8 enemies, Thaxmer said, studying the situation. They have good positions and heavy weapons. Direct attack would fail. Jake watched as the Zephyrians slowly closed in on his trapped crew members. Amy was wounded, and Pete was almost out of ammunition. They would be dead in minutes if no one helped them. What if we attack from 3 directions? Jake suggested. I go around to the left, you take the right, and Zekathai and Morden create a distraction from the front. Thaxmer considered this for a moment. Dangerous, but it might work. Your crew must be ready to fight when we attack. Jake pulled out his emergency communicator. He set it to the frequency his crew would be monitoring and whispered into it. Amy, this is Jake. Help is coming. When you hear weapons fire from the right side, attack the enemies in front of you. Amy's voice crackled back through the device. Commander, are you alive? Thank God, we're ready. Jake and the Krillians moved to their positions. Jake circled around to the left side of the clearing while Thaxmer went right. Zekathai and Morden stayed in the front, ready to charge. The attack began when Thaxmer opened fire on the Zephyrians from the right. His energy weapon cut down 2 of the reptilian soldiers before they could react. At the same time, Zekathai and Morden burst from the trees, roaring their battle cries. Jake attacked from the left, shooting 2 more Zephyrians in the back. Amy and her team immediately joined the fight, attacking the confused enemies from behind their cover. The battle was over in less than a minute. All 8 Zephyrian soldiers were dead, and no one on Jake's side was seriously hurt. Amy ran over to Jake and hugged him tightly. We thought you were dead when the ship exploded. How did you survive? Jake looked at the 3 Krillians who were standing quietly at the edge of the clearing. His crew had not noticed them yet, but they would soon. This was going to be a difficult conversation. I had help, Jake said. I need you all to stay calm and listen to me carefully. Pete Walsh was reloading his weapon when he looked up and saw the Krillians. His face went white and he started to raise his rifle. Wait, Jake shouted. They're with me. They helped save your lives. Commander, Amy said slowly, those are Krillians. They're the enemy, not anymore, Jake said. At least not these ones. They're fighting the Zephyrians too. We're working together. Lisa Turner stared at the 3 aliens with wide eyes. You're serious? You made an alliance with bugheads? Their names are Thaxmer, Zekathai, and Morden, Jake said firmly. They saved my life, and they just helped save yours. I know this is hard to accept, but we need their help to survive. Thaxmer stepped forward slowly, his claws empty of weapons. Human soldiers, he said through his translator. We fight the same enemy. Your leader speaks truth. We wish no harm to your people. Pete kept his weapon ready but did not point it at the Krillians. This is crazy, Commander. Command would court-martial us for this. Command is not here, Jake said. We are, and right now, staying alive is more important than following old rules. Amy looked at Jake, then at the Krillians, then back at Jake. If you trust them, sir, then we trust you. But this is going to take some getting used to. Zekathai approached the human slowly and held out a small medical kit. For wounded, he said in broken English. Amy hesitated, then took the kit. Thank you, she said quietly. Jake felt a small sense of relief. His crew was willing to try this alliance, even if they did not fully understand it yet. It was a start. We need to find shelter, Jake said. The mining tunnels are still several hours away, and there will be more Zephyrian patrols. Thaxmer nodded. There is an old human building not far from here, abandoned mining station. It has good defensive positions. As they began walking toward the shelter, Jake noticed that his crew was starting to relax around the Krillians. Amy even asked Isikthai about the healing gel he had used on Jake's shoulder. Pete and Morden walked side by side, both of them keeping watch for enemies. Jake realized that humans and Krillians were not as different as everyone thought. Both species cared about their friends and families. Both were willing to fight for what they believed in. And both were learning. The old mining station was bigger than Jake had expected. It was built into the side of a hill with thick concrete walls and narrow windows that were perfect for defense. Most of the equipment inside was broken or rusted, but the building was still solid. "This will work," Jake said as they explored the main room. "We can see anyone coming from 3 directions, and there's only one way in." Thaxmer examined the walls with his claws. "Good construction. It will stop energy weapons. Your people build things to last." Amy was setting up her communications equipment in the corner. "I'm picking up signals from other escape pods," she said. "Looks like at least 6 more crew members made it to the surface. They're scattered across the continent." Jake felt relief wash over him. More of his people were alive. "Can you contact them?" "I'm trying, but something is jamming the frequencies. The Zephyrians must have set up interference stations." Zigthai was looking out one of the windows. He made a sharp clicking sound and pointed outside. "Enemies coming," he said in his broken English. Everyone grabbed their weapons and moved to the windows. Jake counted 12 Zephyrian soldiers moving through the trees toward the station. They moved in a disciplined formation, using the jungle for cover. "They found us faster than I thought," Pete said, checking his rifle. "We don't have enough ammunition for a long fight." "We don't need long fight," Morden said. "Quick fight. Hit hard, then they run." Jake studied the approaching enemy. These Zephyrians looked different from the ones they had fought before. They had more equipment and moved with better coordination. Some of them were carrying devices he had never seen before. "Something's wrong," Jake said. "These aren't regular soldiers. Look at their gear." Thaxmer moved next to Jake and peered out the window. His compound eyes focused on the strange devices. "Those are not weapons," he said. "They are capture tools. They want us alive." Amy looked up from her radio. "Commander, I'm intercepting some of their communications. The translation is rough, but they're talking about specimen collection and neural mapping." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Neural mapping? What does that mean?" "Unknown," Thaxmer said, "but it sounds dangerous." The Zephyrians were getting closer. Jake could see their reptilian faces clearly now. They had the same cold, calculating look that all Zephyrians shared, but there was something else. They seemed excited, like hunters who had found valuable prey. "Wait," Amy said suddenly. "I'm getting something else on their frequency. It's not coming from these soldiers. It's coming from orbit." She adjusted her equipment and put the signal on speaker. A harsh Zephyrian voice filled the room, speaking in their native language. Amy's translation device worked slowly to convert the words to English. "Harvesting operation proceeding as planned," the voice said. "Subjects from crashed vessel located. Neural patterns from human-Krillian cooperation will be valuable for collective integration." Jake stared at the radio. "Collective integration? What are they talking about?" Thaxmer made a sound that Jake had never heard before. It was like a scream and a hiss combined. The big Krillian shell turned darker and his claws extended fully. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Collective," Thaxmer said, his voice shaking with anger. "They make many minds into one mind. They steal who you are and make you part of them. This is why we fight. This is why we can never surrender." Amy continued translating the intercepted communications. "They're saying they've already collected neural patterns from 17 different species. They want to add human and Krillian patterns to their database." Jake felt sick. This was worse than just conquest or slavery. The Zephyrians were not just taking over worlds. They were stealing the very essence of what made different species unique. How many species have they done this to? Lisa asked. Unknown, Thaxmer said. But my people have stories of entire civilizations that disappeared. We thought they were destroyed. Now we know they were absorbed. The Zephyrian soldiers were almost at the station now. Jake could see the strange devices they carried more clearly. They looked like metal helmets connected to small computers. Neural extraction equipment. We can't let them capture us, Jake said. We have to fight our way out. Where do we go? Pete asked. They probably have the whole area surrounded. Zigthai had been quiet during the conversation, but now he spoke. Up. There's old tunnel system under this place. Mining tunnels go deep into mountain, many exits. Can you find the entrance? Jake asked. Yes, but tunnels are dangerous. Cave-ins, bad air, underground predators. Jake looked at his crew and his alien allies. They were outnumbered and outgunned. The tunnels were risky, but staying here meant capture and neural harvesting. The tunnels it is, Jake said. Zigthai, lead the way. The young Krillian guided them to a maintenance room in the back of the station. Behind some old equipment, there was a hole in the floor with a ladder leading down into darkness. I go first, Zigthai said. Check for dangers. As Zigthai disappeared into the hole, Jake heard the Zephyrians beginning their attack on the station. Energy weapons blasted through the windows, and he could hear the sound of the main door being forced open. They're inside, Amy whispered. One. By one, they climbed down the ladder into the tunnels. Jake was the last to go, staying behind to make sure everyone else got out safely. Just as he reached the bottom, he heard Zephyrian voices in the room above. The tunnel was narrow and dark. Jake used his flashlight to look around. The walls were rough rock, and the air smelled old and stale. Water dripped from the ceiling, and he could hear strange sounds echoing from deeper in the tunnels. This way, Zigthai whispered. Quickly. They moved through the tunnels as fast as they could. Behind them, Jake could hear the Zephyrians discovering the tunnel entrance. It would not be long before they were being chased. The tunnel branched into several directions. Zigthai led them down the left path, but Jake noticed that the young Krillian seemed uncertain about which way to go. Are you sure this is right? Jake asked. I have only been here once, Zigthai admitted. With my clutch brothers when we were young, we explored these tunnels before the war started. They continued deeper into the mountain. The tunnels were like a maze, with passages going in all directions. Some were so narrow they had to crawl. Others opened into large chambers with pools of water and strange rock formations. After what felt like hours of walking, they stopped to rest in a large chamber. Amy set up her radio again and tried to contact the other survivors. I'm getting something, she said. It's not our people, but it's not Zephyrian either. She put the signal on speaker. A voice spoke in a language Jake had never heard before. It sounded like music mixed with whale songs. Unknown species, Thaxmer said, but they are sending distress signals. They are prisoners of the Zephyrians. Amy worked on the translation. They're saying they're being held in a facility on the northern continent. They're begging for help. Jake felt a growing sense of horror. How many species were the Zephyrians holding captive? How many civilizations had they destroyed? We have to do something, Lisa said. We can't just leave them. We are 6 people and 3 Krillians, Pete pointed out. What can we do against an entire alien empire? Thaxmer stood up, his full height impressive even in the large chamber. We do what we can, we fight, we save who we can save, and we make sure the galaxy knows what the Zephyrians are really doing. Jake looked around at his small group. They were tired, wounded, and far from home. But they were also the only ones who knew the truth about the Zephyrian neural harvesting program. He's right, Jake said. Even if we can't stop them completely, we can try to rescue some of their prisoners. And we can get word back to Earth and the Krillian homeworlds about what's really happening. Amy was still working on the alien signals. Commander, I'm picking up more transmissions. There are at least 12 different species being held in that facility. Some of them have been prisoners for years. Jake made his decision. We're going to that facility. We're going to free as many prisoners as we can. And we're going to send a message to every species in the galaxy about what the Zephyrians are really doing. Zeekthai made a happy buzzing sound. Good plan, but very dangerous. Everything is dangerous now, Jake said. But doing nothing is the most dangerous thing of all. They gathered their equipment and continued through the tunnels. Jake knew they were probably walking into a trap. The Zephyrian facility would be heavily guarded, and they had no way to know what they would find there. But as they walked, Jake felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope, not just for their own survival, but for something bigger. Maybe humans and Krillians working together could make a difference. Maybe they could save some of the species that had been captured, and maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to stop the Zephyrians from stealing the minds and souls of entire civilizations. The tunnels ahead were dark and dangerous, but Jake was no longer afraid. He had his crew, his alien allies, and a mission that mattered more than anything else he had ever done. The real war was just beginning. The tunnels led them to the northern continent just as Amy had predicted. They emerged from a cave opening near the coast where the salty air mixed with the jungle smells. Jake could see the Zephyrian facility in the distance, a massive metal structure that looked like it had been dropped from space onto the landscape. "That's bigger than I thought," Pete said, looking through his binoculars. "Must be at least 50 buildings in there." Jake studied the facility through his own scope. Guard towers surrounded the perimeter, and he could see Zephyrian soldiers patrolling the walls. Energy barriers flickered between the towers, creating a deadly fence around the entire complex. "How many prisoners do you think are in there?" Lisa asked. Amy was monitoring the alien communications again. "Based on the signals, at least 300 beings from different species. Some of the transmissions are very weak, like they're coming from underground." Thaxmer crouched next to Jake, his compound eyes focused on the facility. "This is not just prison. This is harvesting center. They take minds here and send them to the collective." Jake felt a chill at the words. Somewhere in that facility, hundreds of intelligent beings were having their thoughts and memories stolen. Their entire identities were being erased to feed the Zephyrian collective consciousness. "We need help," Jake said. 9 of us can't assault that place alone." "Actually," Amy said, adjusting her radio, "I've been in contact with other survivors. Not just from our ship, but from other human vessels that were shot down. There are at least 40 human soldiers scattered across this continent." Jake looked at her with surprise. 40? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I wanted to confirm the numbers first, but there's more. Some of them are working with other species. Krillians, yes, but also some aliens I've never heard of before." Zeekthai made an excited clicking sound. "Other nest clusters are here too. My cousin Vexstar leads a group of 12 warriors. They have been hunting Zephyrians for weeks." Jake began to feel a spark of hope. If there were other human-alien groups working together, maybe they had a real chance of rescuing the prisoners. "Can you contact all of them?" Jake asked Amy. "Already working on it. I'm setting up a meeting point about 10 miles from here. There's an old research station that should be big enough for everyone." As they moved toward the meeting point, Jake noticed something interesting. The way his crew worked with the Krillians had changed completely since their first encounter. Pete and Morden were sharing tactical information. Lisa was learning Krillian hand signals from Zeekthai. Even Amy was trying to understand how Krillian communication devices worked. "Your people adapt quickly," Thaxmer observed. "Most species take much longer to accept new allies." "We have to adapt," Jake said. "It's how humans survive. We're not the strongest or the fastest, so we learn to work with others." "Work with others," Thaxmer repeated. "Yes, this is something special about your species. We are learning this from you." The old research station was a cluster of prefabricated buildings that had been abandoned years ago. When Jake's group arrived, they found they were not the first ones there. Groups of humans and aliens were already gathering in the main building. Jake was amazed by what he saw. Humans were working alongside not just Krillians, but species he had never encountered before. There were tall, thin beings with blue skin and large eyes. Small, furry creatures with 6 arms, even some that looked like living crystals. Commander Morrison, a human woman, approached him. She wore the uniform of a ship's captain, though it was torn and dirty. I'm Captain Sarah Mills of the transport vessel Horizon. We've been coordinating the rescue groups. Jake shook her hand. How many people do we have? 53 humans and about 30 aliens from 7 different species. All of us crashed here or escaped from Zephyrian ships. We've been learning to work together out of necessity. Jake looked around the room. In one corner, a human engineer was working with a crystalline alien to repair some kind of energy weapon. Near the window, Krillian warriors were teaching human soldiers their claw-fighting techniques. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. How is this possible? Jake asked. These species have been enemies for years. The Zephyrians changed everything, Captain Mills said. When you're facing neural harvesting, old grudges don't matter anymore. We all want to keep our minds intact. A new voice joined the conversation. She speaks truth, human leader. Jake turned to see a tall Krillian approaching them. This one had golden markings on his shell and moved with obvious authority. My cousin Vexstar, Zikthai said happily. He leads the Golden Nest Warriors. Vexstar studied Jake with his compound eyes. You are the one who first allied with Thaxmer S group. Word of your cooperation has spread among all the survivors. It gave others hope that alliance was possible. Jake felt a strange sense of pride. His decision to work with the Krillians had somehow inspired others to do the same thing. We're stronger together than apart. Yes, Vexstar agreed. But there is more. Your people have a gift we had not recognized before. You help others work together, even when they have never met before. Jake looked around the room again. Now that Vexstar had pointed it out, he could see it clearly. The humans were not just working with the aliens. They were helping different alien species work with each other. A human medic was teaching a blue-skinned alien to treat Krillian injuries. A human communications officer was setting up translation devices between species that had never been able to communicate before. In our histories, Vexstar continued, we have records of many great alliances. But they were always between 2 species, and they took many years to develop. Your people create multi-species alliances in days or weeks? Captain Mills nodded. It's true. Every human survivor group we've found has attracted other species, not just as allies but as friends. It's like we're natural diplomats or something. Jake thought about this. Throughout human history, they had always been good at adapting to new situations and working with different groups. Maybe that skill worked with alien species too. We need to use this, Jake said. If we can get all these different species working together, we might actually be able to rescue the prisoners. Agreed, Vexstar said. But the facility is heavily defended. We will need more than cooperation. We will need a plan that uses each species' strengths. Over the next several hours, Jake watched something remarkable happen. The mixed group of humans and aliens began planning the most complex multi-species military operation he had ever seen. The crystalline beings could phase through solid matter, making them perfect for infiltration. The blue-skinned aliens had natural stealth abilities. The Krillians were powerful fighters. The small furry creatures were expert engineers who could disable the facility's security systems, but it was the humans who seemed to naturally understand how to coordinate all these different abilities. They asked the right questions, made the right suggestions, and helped everyone communicate effectively. Your people are remarkable, said one of the blue-skinned aliens, whose name was something like Whisper. We have fought each other for generations, but you make us see that we are not so different. Jake was starting to understand what made humans special. It was not their technology or their military skills. It was their ability to find common ground with anyone, even their worst enemies. The Zephyrians are afraid of this, Thaxmer said. Suddenly, this is why they harvest minds instead of just conquering worlds. They fear species working together. What do you mean? Jake asked. Think about it. If they just wanted to control territory, they would kill or enslave everyone. But they want to absorb our thoughts and memories. They want to understand how we think and feel. They are studying us. Captain Mills looked thoughtful. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to stop species from allying against them. Or maybe, Jake said slowly, they're trying to learn how to do what humans do naturally, how to bring different species together. The room fell quiet as everyone considered this possibility. If the Zephyrians were studying human cooperation abilities, it meant they saw it as a threat to their empire. All the more reason to rescue those prisoners, Jake said. We need to show the galaxy that the Zephyrians can be defeated when species work together. As the planning continued, Jake realized that this mission was about more than just saving lives. It was about proving that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that diversity was stronger than uniformity, that the free will of many species was more powerful than the collective mind of one. The attack on the facility would be dangerous, but for the first time since his ship had been destroyed, Jake felt confident about their chances. Not because they had superior weapons or numbers, but because they had something the Zephyrians could never truly understand. They had hope, friendship, and the unbreakable bonds that formed when different species chose to trust each other. Tomorrow, they would put that trust to the ultimate test. The attack began at dawn. Jake watched from a hill overlooking the Zephyrian facility as the first phase of their plan went into motion. The crystalline beings, who called themselves the Prison People, phased through the outer walls like ghosts. Their job was to disable the security systems from inside. Phase 1 complete, Amy reported through her communicator. Security barriers are down. Jake felt his heart racing. This was the most complex operation he had ever commanded, and it involved more species than he could count. If it failed, hundreds of prisoners would die, and the Zephyrians would learn how to counter multi-species cooperation. Phase 2, go, Jake ordered. The blue-skinned aliens, who called themselves the Silent Ones, used their natural stealth abilities to infiltrate the guard towers. Jake could not see them moving, but he could see the Zephyrian guards suddenly falling unconscious at their posts. Towers secured, Captain Mills reported from her position. Now came the hard part. Jake looked at the mixed group of warriors gathered around him. Humans, Krillians, and several other species stood ready to assault the main facility. They had painted their faces with symbols from all their different cultures, creating a visual representation of their alliance. Remember, Jake said to the group, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who has ever been harvested by the Zephyrians. We're fighting for the right to think our own thoughts and dream our own dreams. Vaxmer raised his claws and made a battle cry that was answered by all the Krillians. The other species added their own war sounds, creating a chorus that echoed across the valley. Let's go, Jake said. They charged down the hill toward the facility. Jake had expected heavy resistance, but the Zephyrian response was confused and unorganized. The reptilian soldiers had never faced an attack by so many different species working together. Jake saw a group of Zephyrians trying to set up a defensive position near the main building. Before he could react, Vexstar and his golden nest warriors were attacking from the left, while human soldiers flanked them from the right. The coordination was perfect, even though the two groups had only been working together for a day. Building 1 secured, Pete reported over the radio. Found 30 prisoners from 6 different species. Building 2 clear, Lisa added. Another 20 prisoners here. Jake pushed deeper into the facility with Thaxmer and Zigthai. They were looking for the main control center, where Amy had detected the strongest alien signals. As they moved through the corridors, Jake noticed something strange about the Zephyrian defenses. The reptilian soldiers seemed more interested in studying the attackers than in stopping them. Some of them were recording the battle with small devices instead of using their weapons. They're not trying to win, Jake realized. They're trying to learn from us. Learning what? Thaxmer asked. How we work together? How we coordinate attacks between different species. They want to understand our cooperation so they can counter it. Jake's suspicions were confirmed when they reached the main control center. Instead of finding a military command post, they discovered a massive research facility filled with computers and monitoring equipment. Zephyrian scientists were analyzing data from the battle in real time. "They've been studying us this whole time," Jake said. "Every alliance we formed, every successful cooperation between species, they've been recording it all." Amy burst into the control room with a group of rescued prisoners. "Commander, you need to see this. The entire facility is one giant research station. They're not just harvesting mines, they're trying to figure out how to prevent species from working together." Jake looked at the computer screens around the room. They showed tactical analyses of human-alien cooperation, psychological profiles of different species, and detailed studies of how alliances formed and functioned. "This is their real weapon," Jake said. "They learn how we cooperate, then they develop ways to turn us against each other." One of the rescued prisoners, a tall alien with silver skin, approached Jake. "Human leader," she said through a translation device, "my people have been studying their methods for months. The Zephyrians have destroyed 17 civilizations using this technique." "What technique?" Jake asked. "They study how species work together, then they send infiltrators to break those alliances. They create mistrust, fear, and conflict between allies. Once species are fighting each other, the Zephyrians move in to harvest everyone." Jake felt a chill of understanding. This was why the Zephyrians had been so successful. They did not just conquer worlds through military force. They conquered them by destroying the bonds between species. "But it's not working this time," Thaxmer observed. "We are still fighting together." "Because humans are different," the silver-skinned alien said. "Your species creates alliances faster than the Zephyrians can study them. You adapt and change your cooperation methods constantly. They cannot keep up." Jake looked around the control room. The rescued prisoners included members of 12 different species, all of whom had been captured while trying to form alliances against the Zephyrians. But now they were working together to destroy the research that had been used against them. "We need to destroy all of this," Jake said. "Every computer, every file, every piece of research they've collected." "Agreed," Vextar said. "But first, we must rescue the remaining prisoners." They spent the next hour freeing everyone they could. Find. The facility held over 400 beings from 23 different species. Some had been prisoners for years, others for only days. All of them had been scheduled for neural harvesting. As they worked, Jake noticed something remarkable happening. The newly freed prisoners were not just grateful to be rescued, they were immediately volunteering to help rescue others. Species that had never met before were working together like old friends. This is what the Zephyrians fear, Jake realized. Not just our individual species, but our ability to bring everyone together. Amy was working on the facility's main computer. "Commander, I've accessed their central database. They have information about Zephyrian operations across the entire galaxy. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of species. Can we transmit it?" Jake asked, already working on it. "I'm sending everything to every species we can contact. Their locations, their methods, their weaknesses. By tomorrow, half the galaxy will know how to fight them." Jake watched the data transmission progress on the screen. This information would change everything. Species that had been fighting each other would learn that the Zephyrians were their real enemy. Worlds that had been isolated would join together for mutual defense. "The Zephyrians are going to be very angry," Thaxmer said. "Let them be angry," Jake replied. "By the time they figure out how to respond, it will be too late. The galaxy will be united against them." As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Through the windows, Jake could see Zephyrian ships landing outside. Reinforcements were arriving. "Time to go," Captain Nils said over the radio. "We've got about 50 enemy ships incoming." Jake looked at the hundreds of freed prisoners gathered in the facility's main courtyard. They represented dozens of species, many of whom had been enemies before today. But now they stood together, ready to fight for their freedom. "Can we evacuate everyone?" Jake asked. Not in time, Amy said. The ships will be here in minutes. Jake made a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. Then we don't evacuate. We make our stand here. All of us together. The mixed group of humans, Krillians, and other species took defensive positions throughout the facility. Jake watched as beings who had been strangers hours ago worked together to prepare for battle. This is insane, Pete said. We're outnumbered 50-1. Numbers don't matter, Jake replied. What matters is that we're fighting for something. They can never understand. We're fighting for the right to be different, to think differently, to work together despite our differences. The Zephyrian ships landed and began deploying troops. But something unexpected happened. Instead of attacking immediately, the Zephyrian commander requested a communication link. Human leader, the reptilian voice said through the speakers, we offer you terms. Surrender now, and we will harvest your minds painlessly. Resist, and we will make you watch as we destroy every species you have allied with. Jake picked up the communication device. Counter-offer. Leave this planet now, and we won't share your research data with the rest of the galaxy. Oh wait, too late, we already did. The communication cut off abruptly. Jake could see the Zephyrian forces massing for attack, but he was no longer afraid. Around him, dozens of species stood ready to fight together. Whatever happens, Jake said. To his allies, we've already won. The galaxy knows the truth now. They know that cooperation is possible, and they know how to fight back. The battle that followed lasted 3 days. But it was not the desperate last stand that Jake had expected. Instead, it became a celebration of everything that made different species special. Humans provided strategy and coordination. Krillians brought strength and courage. The Prism people used their unique abilities to confuse the enemy. The Silent Ones struck from the shadows. By the end of the 3rd day, the Zephyrian forces were in full retreat. They had never faced an enemy that grew stronger through diversity instead of weaker through division.